What's going on, everybody? Today I'm joined by MMA fighter Beneil Dariush. Thanks for your time, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I want to start with this tweet that I saw last night because Ariel Helwani, he tweeted, Dana White says at the presser they are working on a new 288 co-main. How about Dariush times Poirier? Dariush needs a big fight. Poirier is getting antsy and ready to go. UFC tried to book it last year. Love it. And someone responded, they said, Dustin literally doesn't want that, bro. And Ariel responded, he told me himself he does, bro. So what do you know about any of that? Because he's trying to say that I guess Poirier told him that he wants to fight you on at UFC 288.
Yeah, I never heard any of this. If that's the case, make it happen. I'll be ready to go. I've only seen the interviews where Dustin Poirier. Well, I saw the first interview right after the Chandler fight where he said, "Oh yeah, Dariush makes sense," and then I saw like maybe like a day later, maybe 12 hours later, and he said, "No, I'm not interested." So I don't know where Ariel is getting it. Maybe he spoke with Dustin Poirier directly, and things have changed. But the thing is, unless I have a contract, I don't believe anybody.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. I was surprised because I've heard you say that he didn't want to fight you, and I think he said that publicly. Like he was
He
just like
he,
saying, yeah,
he said it publicly. I didn't. I don't want to put words in his mouth.
right. Well, people could check that to see because I think he said he wasn't interested, or I don't remember the exact words, but that was a couple months ago, right?
Hmm. It was right after the Chandler fight. He did an interview, I think, with Ariel.
Okay, maybe Ariel has some intel, maybe not. Well, I just
Hmm.
wanted to know. With the Charles fight, everybody heard that he got injured and that they were canceling it. And then I believe you said yesterday what you've been told, but is there any news on that? You have a contract, or do you know when that fight's going to be rescheduled?
Still no contract, but they said June 10th, and typically when they say they're pretty accurate on stuff like this. When they say the fight's gonna happen June 10th, I believe them.
I know on Schmo you said that they won't tell you the injury. Is that normal because they don't want to give you an advantage? Like if you or someone else got injured, do they normally not say, or do they usually disclose that?
I think UFC never discloses it. It's always the athletes who disclose it, and then once they do, the UFC will as well.
Okay. Do you trust it? Like them saying, because I know the fight has been delayed already.
I mean, the UFC is they told me they had to contact Charles's doctor, so obviously I believe there's an injury there, or at least there's something there. The UFC is not going to postpone this fight. They they're losing a co-main event, and a lot of people are unhappy about it.
Right. How do you feel about everybody in the comments? It seems like everyone's on your side in the UFC community. A lot of the fighters, they're all like Dariush deserves a shot. It seems like everybody's got your back.
Yeah, I'm getting pushed so hard right now. Like I feel like I have so much momentum behind me, but for some reason the UFC doesn't see it that way. They're not super big on me getting just going straight for the title shot, but the MMA community has been great, man. Thank you so much.
I wanted to ask with the weight cutting and stuff. I know you just had another kid and you were a little, annoyed that the fight took a while and then you're cutting weight and then you kind of have to roll it back. What's that process like? Because from what you were telling me that you have to cut weight or you start to do that process like weeks in advance. That seems like it's pretty rough.
So, let's see, what did I do? Right after I found out I wasn't fighting, I put some weight back on because I had got down to like 78, 180, 78, which is pretty light. I know I'm fighting at 55, but most of my cut is water weight. So I put some weight back on. I would say this morning I was like 183, 184. The reason why I keep my weight on is because I'm less likely to get injured. When you cut weight too much, too early, injuries flare up a lot. So, and as far as the weight cut goes, obviously I go into a little bit of a calorie deficit. I wouldn't say like a big calorie deficit. It's not very difficult in terms of that, but one thing I do, I would say other fighters probably don't do is I'll walk like an hour a night. I'll walk anywhere between 3 to 5 miles a day, and that's mainly for losing weight because weight loss. When you become a good athlete, when you build a good endurance and you get in good shape, you actually it's very difficult to lose fat because what happens is you go into a practice and your body automatically, what it does is actually holds on to the fat, and what it does is improve your cardiovascular system. It focuses on the cardiovascular. So to lose weight, I have to do a lot of slow stuff like walking or at a very slow pace, riding bike, things like that. And it's really boring, but it's very effective. So yeah, I'll do like a walk for an hour or things like that, and they seem to work the best.
All that being said, how do you feel about it? Because I know you love to fight. It's getting pushed back a little. Is it annoying? Are you over it now and just ready?
I was hoping to fight in March. You know what I mean? I was hoping to fight in March, have my baby in March as well, and then I'm good to go. I could just chill it. But now we're in May. The fight was supposed to happen in May. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have a few weeks where I'm gonna not have a lot of time with my daughter, but whatever, I'll make it happen. And now it's pushed back to June. So it's just a pain in the ass, man. Like this totally unnecessary.
Well, even with all the weight cut and all that stuff, you almost have to like rewind it, right? A few weeks, maybe like 4 weeks,
Mhm.
just totally go through stuff you already did and redo it.
Now I have to be careful with injuries because remember, you're peaking. 3 weeks out, I've hit my peak. I've hit like the peak. So what I have to do is pull back a little bit because if I keep training at the peak, at my peak and keep pushing myself like this, chances of injury go up. So what I'm gonna do now is pull back. This week's gonna be really light, and then next week I push the pace again. But again, slowly build back up to where I was.
I know that you came from Iran, right? You were born in Iran. You came to America. I know you love God. You love Jesus. Could you tell me about that? When did you come to America and what's that been like? Were you always Christian?
So I'm sorry, I haven't had anything to eat
No, you're
today.
good.
I was born in Iran, and I'm Assyrian. Assyrians are predominantly Christians because they were there before the Islamic regime took over. They allowed Assyrians to stay Christian. All right. So, but being a Christian in a Islamic country is not always the easiest. Fortunately for us in Iran, it wasn't like they were persecuting us to the point of death. There were difficulties for sure, but it wasn't like other countries where situations like ISIS happen, and awful things like that happen. Um, Anyways, that being said, my parents thought to themselves it would be ideal for us to come to America, more opportunities for the kids, my sister and I. And while while I was a Christian by name, if that makes sense, I went to church because my family went to church and whatever. I was not a Christian until my 20s. I became a devout Christian in my 20s, and a lot had to do with actually having to provide at home. We had a lot of issues with finances in my early 20s, and at that time I was a jiu-jitsu competitor. I was supposed to be the next big thing in jiu-jitsu, and my mom asked me for help, and she had never done that before. So I I I I kind of actually freaked out. I was like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to get a 9 to 5 job, sort of thing." But God opened doors. I remember going into my room and praying and like saying, "Hey, if you're real, if you're up there, I need some help." And so doors started opening for me to fight MMA, to make money like that, and opportunities to teach. Really cool things just kept happening over and over again to the point where I was like, all right, I get it. Whatever I've asked for, you've been there. What do you want from me? And I remember thinking to the first thing that came to my mind was my wrestling coach, who was also a pastor, and he had invited me to church multiple times, and I had denied him multiple times because I'd be like, "Oh man, Sunday, I train on Sunday, I can't make it, right?" And so that was kind of the thing, and I went to church and I started listening. But church is once a week, it's great once a week, and it's great to gather and worship together. But I kept hearing the same message about this guy Jesus, and I've heard it all my life, and I've ignored it pretty much my whole life. So, but I finally said I'm going to figure this out. I picked up the Bible. I started reading the Bible. Once I got to know him, once I got to know his character, I just fell in love with him. And it took a couple of years because I was so stubborn, but eventually I devoted my life to him. I would say around like 24, 23, 24, I really devoted my life to him. And I'm still wrestle. I still wrestle with him on a lot of issues, but I really do want to do his will and not mine.
Awesome. I know your last fight was in the Middle East, and it got some good play. Like on the internet, a lot of people saw your. I can't remember exactly what you said, but you gave a shout out to Jesus. What was the reaction like in the audience? Did people kind of like it, or?
Um, in the audience, not really. I got booed a little bit. You know, Islam, their thing is like Jesus is a prophet. He's not the son of God. So if I had mentioned the last part, I said the son of God, they would have been cool with it. But because I mentioned son of God, they kind of started booing me. Anyways, I will say this about Abu Dhabi. It was very welcoming. Abu Dhabi had a very family friendly feel, while Dubai had a very luxurious feel.
Mm.
I had a great time there. Well, even though they booed me, they were very cordial and very nice to me afterwards. So overall, Abu Dhabi was amazing for me. Even though I got booed, I'm perfectly okay with it.
Do you think if you win the next fight in June that you could get on the Abu Dhabi card with Islam? Is that the hope?
That's pretty much what they're telling me. Yeah, I
Okay.
if I beat Charles, I become number one contender, and they're saving Makachev for Abu Dhabi. He's not gonna fight till Abu Dhabi.
I know. I think it was Gaethje who said that they're gonna flip tables if they don't give you a title shot and you win. I mean, I think it would be the craziest denial ever at this point if you won and they didn't give you the title shot.
Yeah, flipping tables is me. He said we're gonna riot,
Oh,
so he's
okay.
gonna start a riot. I'm gonna flip tables. I'm gonna take pictures during the riot too. That's kind of my thing.
I don't think they will. I guess I wanted to ask when you got into MMA. Did you get into it in Iran or in America?
I wish I got into it earlier. I wish I wrestled in Iran, but I didn't really start uh, until 18, basically. Well, maybe 17. High school was pretty much over my senior year. My buddy of mine invited me to do some wrestling, and I liked it. I wrestled for about a month in high school. But as I was about to go to college, everybody was telling me, hey, when you go to college, you're going to gain a lot of weight, you get fat. And so you don't you want to make sure you stay on top of that. And I thought to myself, man, that's gonna be me. I don't really like working out. I hate going to the gym, right? And so I thought to myself, I've been really enjoying wrestling. I do like watching MMA. I'll go join a jiu-jitsu gym. I went and checked out a jiu-jitsu gym, fell in love with it right away, and that was pretty much it. That was the reason I started jiu-jitsu for recreational reasons and for staying in shape. And then I fell in love with it. And then once I started competing, that was competition was awesome. I love competition. Still do.
You've been on a huge win streak, but I know at a certain point you lost a few. What was it like then, and what kind of your mindset has to be crisp to win that many in a row? So was there like a moment that you learned stuff, changed it, or just was that is that just part of fighting?
I will say this. Well, I can make a lot of excuses for the reasons why I wasn't doing as well as I should. But the cool thing about, even though I was losing, um, I would say it like this: you hear God the best when you're in the desert. So I spent a lot of time in the desert. It was like 2 years without winning. I went with a loss, a draw, and then a loss again, and I was even contemplating retirement, and so all these things put you in a really tough spot. But the good thing about it is, in these tough times, you really start to hear God better, and you start to communicate with Him more. And so it was not a fun time, but it was a necessary time that I really needed.
What do you think of Charles as a fighter, and how confident are you going into it? Because I know you're both relatively nice compared to other people, respectful.
Yeah, Charles, I mean, he's a great human being. As far as a human being goes, he's a great guy. I don't have any issues with him there. And then as far as fighting goes, I think he's the most offensive fighter I've ever faced. Might be the most offensive fighter in general, right? he's so much offense. He has such great offense, and uh, not that he doesn't have defense. It's just his offense is very overwhelming. So that's the way I look at him, and the way I approach him is an uber offensive guy who was willing to take risks in order to make his offense work. So the goal for me is to take advantage of that. Is to take advantage of his offense and use it against them.
Do you look at odds? Like I know in Gamera, I think you were the underdog, right? Pretty heavy underdog in that fight.
So I don't normally look at them. Like I didn't know I was an underdog against Gamrot, or I don't think I knew. But then I figured I would be underdog, but I didn't think I was like a 2.5 or underdog or 2-1 underdog. That was surprising, right? And then with Charles, everybody's been telling me I'm actually the favorite. So, uh, interesting times, Interesting times. It's weird how I can go from being an underdog against Gamrod, who was ranked number 8, and then all of a sudden I'm favored against number 1. It's weird. I don't understand how the odd makers do things.
For sure. With the Charles fight in June, it seems likely. I know the Schmo had the old interview where you almost predicted the delay the first time. How confident do you feel that it's going to happen on June 10th?
I'm not confident, to be honest with you. I'm not super confident it's gonna happen, but I've I'm hoping it happens because I really do want to fight. I don't want to wait till October to fight again. I rather fight now and then fight again in October. I enjoy fighting and I feel that I improve once I fight. When I fight, I always feel things get sharper and things get better, and I improve like that.
For sure. Last question, and then you can say whatever you want, any message to the people. But my question is, I've heard what you said about the McGregor situation, and then I saw how media reported it. Like, sometimes it gets exaggerated or spun. And I know you said that he could have stayed in the USADA pool with his injury. And then a lot of people ran headlines, Chael, a few media things like that. You said he was cheating. Do you think that's like an accurate portrayal of what you said, or that they're kind of exaggerating?
I think it's just about accurate. I mean, it's just cheating. I don't know what Chael or all these other people really said, but as far as Connor goes, I really do think he's cheating. But I think he's also, man, he doesn't know what to do. I think he's so lost right now. Like every fighter wants to be rich and have power like he does. But he is the opposite now. He's willing to give up all his wealth and whatever to be a good fighter again. But it's tricky. Once you get comfortable, it's hard to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. So I think he's been comfortable for too long, and now he's hoping these shortcuts will get the job done. But it's not that simple. It's you know you only in the fire can you really mold something and build a weapon that can be properly used. And I just don't think he puts himself in the fire enough.
With that being said, I know he's a huge draw. Like he's done a lot for the sport, right? He sells a lot of pay-per-views. Do you think it kind of puts question marks on USADA and the UFC if they just kind of let him skirt the rules, or are they still claiming that he's going to make his full 6 months?
Well, that's the thing. USADA has claimed that he has to do his 6 months and 2 clean tests. So USADA's sticking to what they said, and if he gets around that somehow, then it looks a little weird. But USADA has claimed he has to do his 2 tests and do his 6 months. So I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Do you think Connor would want to fight you or no?
I think he would talk about fighting me and say that he could, obviously overwhelm me and just how he's better than me. But as far as getting a contract to fight Connor, I don't think that's ever going to happen. And it just, I think for him, it doesn't make sense, right? He would rather fight somebody that's a bigger name. He would rather fight somebody who's beat him like Dustin Poirier. You know, I feel like he's in that point in his career where he wants to do those like historical fights, like him and Nate Diaz maybe, or him and Dustin Poirier because he lost to Dustin Poirier. But besides that, I don't really think he wants to go for the belt because there's a lot to that belt. There's a lot of pressure to be champion. So I don't really think he wants to deal with that.
I'm gonna squeeze in one more question because I know at the last event, I don't know if you saw it last weekend, the first fight, a lot of people were complaining about the judges. On one hand, anytime a fight's somewhat close, you leave it up to the judges, it's scary. On another hand, there's been a few, I guess, questionable ones. How do you feel about that as a fighter? Because I know you can't go in for the knockout every time. Sometimes you got to play strategic, but any sort of close fight, it seems like there's been some suspect calls.
Yeah, so judging is difficult because think about it like this. Our sport is relatively new. Some of the judges, because each state has its own judges, right? Like if you have a fight in Vegas, you're gonna get typically better judges, even though they're not the best. But then you go to places that don't have that many MMA fights, and they don't have that many good judges. All of a sudden, you get those weird decisions, and you're just like, what the heck's going on? So I I would like to understand how they get their judges, what's the criteria for the judges, and what experience do the judges have. Like these things are important, right? Like if you're gonna put someone if you're gonna have a fireman, you want him to pass all the physical tests and all the tests on how to use his gear, right? Same thing with judges. They need to have an understanding of martial arts and how MMA works and what's considered winning and not winning, right? So the situation with judges is so complicated and such a pain in the ass.
I've heard that some of them are boxing judges or they use similar. I don't know if that's true, but
Yeah,
that's a huge problem if they're not that experienced in MMA.
no, that's true. Sometimes they're boxing judges, and so a boxing judge goes in and judges an MMA fight. Well, he's only going to judge the striking part, right? He's going to be like, "Oh, I see him landing punches. I see him landing kicks. I don't really understand the ground, so I'm just gonna not really score it or something like that, right?" It just that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
And whether it's a 3 or 5 round fight, especially a 3 round fight, boxing are typically a lot longer, more rounds. So it's a little harder sometimes maybe to mess it up with UFC. If you got a 3 round fight and one round's really close and it's 1-1, and there's more strikes that one person has, but somebody took somebody down, but they didn't really do much with it. These are the times where people seem real split.
Yeah, and all that stuff can be objective. I'm sorry, subjective. In terms of judging. So that's the other thing. It's so hard to like, oh, this guy got it wrong. Well, it's subjective, especially if he didn't do any damage. And how do you look at it? Like the Makachev Volkanovski fight is a very good example of that. I think it was round four. Makachev takes him down, takes his back, has a body triangle, and but it's Volkanovski punching and landing stuff and yelling and just looks like he's the one in control, right?
Right.
But he's not. In reality, it's Makachev in control. He's the one in a good position. But so how do you score that round, right? It's
Right.
just it's one of those things. It's very subjective.
Yeah, I remember watching that live and thinking he's the one landing strikes, but it's a tough call, I guess. Do you change your strategy due to that? Like, do you look at certain things, especially over? And I'm not saying it's a new thing that they're judging it like this, but be like, hey, we got to really win outright and not even, let the judges kind of mess us up.
My thing has always been win every second of every fight. That's the goal. Especially, for example, with Charles. Charles is the type of fighter, he's so aggressive, and the better he does, the more confidence he gets. So I have to make sure defensively I'm perfect, offensively I'm perfect, and I don't allow any gaps in concentration and where he can take advantage of that and find a finish. And that's really pretty much all my fights. Um, with the exceptions of maybe I'll take this guy down or maybe I won't take this guy down. But that's really how I look at fights is to be perfect.
A lot of people are afraid to go to the ground with Oliveira. I'm guessing you're not even remotely, right?
No, no, I train with a lot of jujitsu guys who are better than him. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to insult him or anything, but these guys are world class jujitsu guys, and I train with them, and it's awful, man. They're so good. It's really humbling to be honest with you. Going into an MMA practice against world class guys and winning all your rounds, and then you go into a jujitsu practice and you do jiu-jitsu with the really good jiu-jitsu guys and you lose all your rounds. It's very humbling.
Say like 4 years ago, do you feel like you're higher level at everything? Because I know as time goes on, you learn more. It like, do you feel that
Yes,
way?
here I feel like I've gained more knowledge. I can apply things better, but I've also molded my game in a way where it just fits more for MMA. I would say in terms of jiu-jitsu, I might not be as good as I used to be in terms of competition, but I have more knowledge and I've molded it well for MMA.
I stretched out my last question, 5 questions. So I have to get the real last question down. Anything else you want to say to the people?
Man, I just lately there's been so much love, and I just want to say thank you for all the love, to all my fans, and I appreciate it. Even the people who don't like me or aren't my fans are like, okay, this guy deserves this shot. So I appreciate everybody, and that's it, man. Let's just keep it going.
And to the UFC, I understand that certain people talk a lot, etc. But I think your brand of you being yourself is just going to grow in popularity because the more fights you win, people really like your humbleness and you just want to fight. I think that's really growing in popularity. So they might not see it that way, but I think when the time comes, everybody's going to be watching your fights, and including in June. Hopefully, it
Yeah,
happens
I mean, it's always good to have somebody that's counterculture, right? You don't want everybody to be doing the same exact thing, cookie cutter.
for sure. Thanks for your time, Benil. Appreciate you.
My pleasure, bro. Take care.